This is Perspectivas Latinas, a community service of CAN TV. I'm your host, Juan Carlos Hernandez. Seen, but often unheard, immigrant workers are part of the lifeblood of our city, and the struggle for their rights is unending. However, the Latino Union of Chicago is an organization that collaborates with immigrant and day laborers to create alternatives to the injustices they face. Our guests, Tomas, Eric Rodriguez, and Gabriela Benitez, will talk about those issues and Latino Union's work. Welcome.
Thank you.
Let's start off by briefly talking about you and how you became a part of Latino Union. Lisa?
Okay, I've been a caregiver for 22 years, and Eric came by the house one day, and he was talking about starting a study, trying to find these women. Where can we find these women? And it started off with the surveys. They trained us on how to go out and survey the women, and we sat down. We had the training through a lady called Matilde, who's a part of the organization, the Chicago Coalition of Household Workers. And we had the training, and after the training, we set out to find these women. A matter of fact, we became organizers after the training.
Awesome.
And we set out all over the city of Chicago looking and seeking out these women, going to parks, daycare centers, field houses, searching these women out.
Okay, great. Eric?
I got started with the Latino Union going on 10 years now.
10 years?
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate to be able to work with Latino Union because it works with the population of folks that are like my family. I was born out of a family that was undocumented, face all the same similarities of the folks who are our members and who we support. My dad did a lot of day labor work. My mom is a current domestic worker doing caregiving work. So it hits me in the heart, and I'm very fortunate to be able to work with Latino Union.
Awesome. Gabriela?
Yeah, I actually just joined on not long ago this summer in July, and I'm really honored to be a part of Latino Union. From coming into Chicago and seeing the work that's being done, very similar to Eric, also my father's a construction worker. I also lived most of my life as, being undocumented. My parents, my whole family's mixed status, and my mom has been a house cleaner for over a decade now. So I particularly am working as a program coordinator with the domestic workers, and we're pushing a lot of great stuff coming out of that program.
Okay, great. Now, you can speak most of this, Eric. How was Latino Union born, and to what end? What were you seeking when you first created? I'm sure some of that has changed a bit. But
Sure.
Tell me about those first days.
It's a beautiful phenomenon what Latino Union is, and the transition, the transformation it's going through. It's very unique. It's not typical. It's not a typical nonprofit, and it's not a typical workers' rights organization. What Latino Union is a new generations of organizations that work specifically with the most vulnerable population of workers, including domestic workers, day laborers, there's restaurant workers, farm workers, etc. And it's called a worker center type of organization, and it's a new phenomenon. You could think about it as like the new generation of the labor movement. We had unions before, but now it's these worker centers that are the new phenomenon. And like many worker centers, the Latino Union was founded by the community that's being affected. So in our case, it was women from the staffing agencies. So about 13 years ago, when they suffer from wage theft, sexual harassment, other abuses, they had nowhere else to go. So like many other groups like us, they started their own organization. And that was Latino Union. In Spanish, La Unión Latina, which was the unity of Latinos. And it's evolved into a multicultural, multiracial, multi-generational type of organization that specifically works with street corner day laborers and domestic workers.
What happened? Well, you said there was wage theft of these staff. What were the positions exactly?
Staffing agency workers. So these are the workers, as we see in Chicago, is a big phenomenon with the staffing agencies. Hundreds of thousands of workers every single day search work that way.
Okay.
But there's an epidemic in the country, not only Illinois, but the entire country of wage theft. It's a epidemic, and where people go to work and for a day, for a week, for a month, whatever their job is, and not get paid at the end. According to a recent study from UIC, only Chicago, Cook County, loses about $7 million per week
per week
because of people not being paid.
And how does that happen? Because they're undocumented or they're
No, wage theft is a
Or
phenomenon for
cuts
all.
across the board.
Exactly. So it doesn't matter, and let's be very clear. If you're undocumented, you have the equal same labor protections and rights as a documented worker. That's something we all share. But this phenomenon of wage theft is something that happens more specifically with the most vulnerable sector of workers.
So they just say, well, we're not going to pay you, or they fire you and never give you a paycheck, or
That's right. And or change up the agreement. Something common that happens with street corner day laborers is that they make verbal agreements, and many domestic workers do
Right.
too. And so they'll perform the work, and then when it's time to get paid, they're not paid. There's instances where workers literally are taken somewhere where they're not even familiar with, do the job. Contractor, after the job is done, just disappears. Literally, sometimes we've had to go and pick them up and try to figure
Really?
out where they're at, you know.
wow. So these women, these courageous women, come together, and they organize. They form this. They make this organization, and they say, well, we've got to come together to protect ourselves, to stand up with each other. You've been there since the beginning, pretty much.
I've been there since it actually became a sort of the nonprofit.
Okay.
For
When you
its-
got the 501c3
Yeah, so I
status.
came in 2003. It was already a group since 1999, just about, and it was born out of the back of the yards neighborhood.
Oh, it started back in the
That's
yards.
right. And so when I came in, none of us were paid. I was literally, when we did finally become a nonprofit, I became the very first paid organizer. So not even the director at that point was paid. So it was all volunteer, grassroots style.
Wow. So it took a lot of courage from a lot of folks to
That's right.
keep it coming. Now, day laborers, domestic workers, the most vulnerable workers of our society do face a great number of challenges daily when they go out to work. But as far as organizing, what were some of those problems that they saw, some of the people that were working against them? Because it is, you are standing up for your rights, and when you're standing up for your rights means you're standing up against someone or something. What were they encountering?
Yeah, and that's really a good question, because we really have to share sort of our history, trajectory, and even our analysis as an organization, as a community, how we learn through our experiences. It is correct. It is about improving the condition of a worker and their job site, and there's accountability to the employer. But something that's beautiful and unique about our movement, our work, is the way we go about it. And it's actually not about workers versus the employer, but it's actually working with the employer. The employer is affected also. So how do we together improve the conditions? That's something that the domestic worker movement brought, which is, for example, they're trying to do an impact in the care industry. How we do care, how do we care for each other? There's going to be a big phenomenon of the need of caregivers to care for our elders, because there's about every 8 seconds a baby boomer retires. And so there's going to be a major gap between those who need care and those who could provide it. So for us, it's important that we work from now with the employers and say, hey, this is an issue that's going to affect all of us. How do we work together? How do we provide you the best care? And how do you also recognize and appreciate the work that we do?
Okay. And Lisa, you've been working, taking care of older folks, right, for 22 years. What were some of the issues that he's touched on and that you've encountered, and how did you become part of a group of people that were saying, you know what, we really need to do more? If you've been in it 22 years, you've obviously have seen and experienced a lot of difficulty, and I'm sure you didn't wait until Latino Union came into existence to do something. So tell me about your experience.
Well, one of my jobs, I work through an organization, and we have a union, SEIU. We have a union.
Oh, through SEIU.
Yeah, so
Okay.
a lot of times when situations came up, I would report it to my supervisor, and they would deal with it through the union.
What types of issues would come up?
Physical abuse, couple of stories. I had one client that I was taking care of 5 days a week, 7 hours a day, and she had a son that was drinking. And every morning I would come over, he was always patting me on my butt or grabbing me in my chest, and I would ask him to stop, and she would ask him to stop. And it had gotten to a point one day, it was like he wanted to physically hurt me because I wouldn't let him touch me. And I took it to my supervisor, and she suggested, get out of there right now. So I left the house, and the union suggested that either we don't service her anymore, or she gets a handle on the son. So as a result, what happened, he ended up moving in next door with the sister.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You said there was another story. You said a couple stories.
Well, I can give you a zillion stories, but I'm going to stick to SEIU stories. I was taking care of this lady, and she had two sons, 165, 155. And every day, my job when I come in is to feed her, give her a bath, take care of her and her needs. And by her being bedridden, that's the only room that I'm supposed to clean. But I would clean the bathroom because I was there and I had to use the bathroom. But she always wanted me to wash the son clothes. You know, she'd have their clothes sitting there, their covers, their sheets sitting there, left for me to wash. The kitchen stacked this high with dishes, and that's not my job to clean up behind them. I was there to service the mother. So, you know, she would call in with a bunch of complaints, and they had somebody come out and investigate the situation, and I ended up leaving.
You ended up leaving.
Yeah.
And I'm sure your story is not unique. A lot of women, and it's primarily women, right, that are caregivers like this.
Well, you know, and I want to talk a little bit about the domestic workers. You know, those women suffer way more than I do, and that's what brought me on board was the fact that these are my sisters. Even though they're immigrants, we're still living and working for the same things, and they deserve dignity, unity, and respect as just as I do. You know, so that's what brought me on board with the domestic workers. I mean, these women are working hard, and the thing is that in the organizing piece, they were scared. It was hard for me to build a relationship with these women. Going out to the parks every day. I had to go out to the park for like about 6 months to get just one lady to talk to me. A lot of them fearful of losing their jobs because a lot of the money that they make, African women, they sending that money back home. You know, family members dying of AIDS or suffering with AIDS, you know. So it was hard for me to get a relationship with those women. And one day I was sitting there and the lady said, "Why are you here? What's your job?" I said, "Well, I'm a caregiver." You know, I said, "I'm hanging around with my people." You know, so everybody started opening up just a little bit, but I had to keep going back in order to build relationships, in order for them to get comfortable enough to tell me the things that were going on. And a lot of those women, especially the nannies, they were living in and supposed to be just nannies, but they were cleaning the house, you know, going to the grocery store, cooking and everything else, but being paid to be a nanny and not even making $3 an hour.
Wow. Not even making $3 an hour and doing all of that.
Everything.
So, go ahead.
Sexual abuse.
Sexual abuse.
Sometimes the husbands, you know, and when they complain to the wives threaten to take their visa or put them out, you know. So they had to go, a lot of them go along with things that they don't even want to go on. And then they've been doing it so long is they get to the point like it's okay, you know. It's okay to be abused. It's okay for someone to treat them that way, you know, just to keep the job, just so they can send that little $5 or $6 to save to send home every month.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, Gabriela, you're working a lot with the domestic workers, right? How common is it to see these complaints, to see the sexual assault in these situations, in the type of work?
But when it comes to sexual abuse and harassment, that's something that alone, just thinking about it, and you go through it, you don't immediately talk about it. Many times, whoever has been the person that was sexually abused, whether it's a domestic worker or anyone, right, is traumatized, and sometimes it takes up to years for somebody to speak up around that. The issues that we tend to hear immediately around, and sometimes not immediately, is around wage theft, right? And, you know, I'm not getting paid. And once we start to see what that, you know, figure out the situation and having to see what we can do around recovering stolen wages, other stories may come up, you know, and it's like Lisa said, you know, she had been going out to the parks for 6 months and trying to hear the stories of the domestic workers, but in terms, it took up to 6 months for somebody to even open up. So and sometimes with members, it takes years for somebody to be able to develop the trust of what they've gone through, and that happens with domestic workers and with day laborers, right? We also just recently had an issue of a day laborer who was picked up by ICE after ICE raided a day labor corner, and We had been working very closely with him, and the community has really responded quickly.
They've come
and
behind him and his family.
And we were able to get him back to his family within 24 hours. And in a particular case, that was quite a difficult case. So until now, I haven't seen somebody with Israel's situation be able to go back to his family. And for 6 months, we continue to push his case, but recently he was also a victim of a crime. And it took him months for him to let us know that he was a victim of a crime. And I think that's it has a lot to do with trust. And sometimes we can't solve everything, right? We're not a service provider. We're an organization who the members are the ones who lead us, right? But when it comes to situations like those that are really intimate, it takes time for people to speak around.
Definitely. Eric, do you want to add something to that? It looked like you wanted to speak.
Oh, well, I mean, just to add, just like Gabi was saying, it's really important that folks really understand what Latino Union is. And like I started with saying, it's not a typical nonprofit or a typical organization. Like Gabriela said, we're not a service, but our mission says it. We collaborate, right? We provide the tools necessary. We work collectively. So those are the things. So if a worker comes to Latino Union and says to any of us, hey, and any other staff or volunteers, I haven't been paid, here's my case, what we do, that's the start of that person's transformation and process of developing a leadership that they didn't even know they have, and so we start collaborating with them. And they, like Gabriel pointed out, we provide them the information necessary and they choose what path they want to take, and they know they have the backing of the organization.
Definitely. One of the, we're dealing with we're talking about a lot of very, very important work and issues that you confront. However, like you're saying, you're not an organization like others, and one of the steps you've taken is the roasting and sale of coffee, which might seem out of place, but it really isn't. Tell me about how this came about and how it's going.
Yeah. It's a beautiful result of providing a space for our community to really work together and brainstorm together what is best for them. And the idea of envisioning something that we need to do to sustain all this incredible work. It took us a long time to build a nonprofit, to get funding, but how do we sustain it for the future? How do we grow? And part of it is that the workers said, well, let's put all our experiences together. And I also want to add that there was important groups and individuals who helped make this happen with the workers. So it was Latino Union's members. It is to help fund Latino Union, but this came about with many trainings from a group called Center for Workplace Democracy that is playing a big role here in Chicago and helping organizations like us start cooperatives to help sustain their work. And also a group called the Coffee Confederation that worked also in providing us some expertise on the coffee industry that the lay laborers and domestic workers needed. So with collectively, we were able to give birth to this project called Café Chicago. Again, like you were pointing out, it was a great way to actually connect our ongoing projects. Workforce development, so it provided trainings and work experience for individuals, a new path of a career for many. It created jobs. It created a tool for leadership development, the incredible transformation of the individual who started. I know some individuals who were just so shy, they didn't want to talk, but now they're just so proud and open and talking about their work. So these are just a taste of the impact that this type of project had on the organization. And naturally, it put us on a different platform as an organization. We now are in the coffee industry. We are now also in the cooperative movement, and which goes perfectly with the organization. A cooperative is a business that all the people in the business own. So there's no really hierarchy. There's no one owner. Everybody, you could be the janitor of that cooperative company and you're part owner and you are part of the decision making. So that type of model fit perfectly with our mission.
What kind of a response have you gotten, and who do you don't necessarily need to name businesses, but who do you sell your coffee to here in Chicago and outside of the city?
You know what? The mission in itself has inspired so many different folks. So we definitely have Café Chicago products in about 40 different local stores here in Chicago, north and south side, west side.
You're not discriminating.
at all. And then we have
all over Chicago.
and then we have nonprofits that and churches that can buy it at a lesser rate and can actually help them fundraise also. So we'll
Oh, wow.
you know, and then we also make sure to put the product in communities where people don't really have access to fair trade and organic products. So it was really important, intentional, that the people that we work with, the communities that we work with, actually have access to these type of products also.
That's great. And where do you see this type of effort growing? Are there any other ideas floating around or being spoken about?
Definitely. I mean, this has inspired a lot of the workers to start other cooperatives. So the compañeros can talk about the ideas some of the domestic workers have had on starting that. Some of the other day laborers have wanted to start construction cooperatives. So it's this emphasis of really being part of the economy. So hence, it also tackles that other typical stereotype that we have of undocumented immigrant workers or individuals who are saying, you know, they're just taking our jobs. But here's a perfect example of them actually stimulating the economy and generating jobs.
Okay, sure. Lisa, would you talk about some of those ideas that are floating around to maybe produce something similar to the Café Chicago, please?
Well, when we did our strategic planning, we had added some things in. You know, in the office, the day laborers, you know, people come in and sign contracts to go out and work. So we're working toward doing those things with the domestic workers. Some of our ladies have been getting calls, you know, people needing somebody to come in and clean their homes and that sort of thing. So we've been doing those type of things to see if we can get our ladies out and have them going out and people coming in and signing. Because some of the ladies, one of my ladies in particular, she's a nanny and she takes care of the baby just for a place to stay. You know, so if we can get some jobs to come in, people to offer help for the ladies, you know, that's what we're doing.
Yeah, and right now we're just in the process of researching how co-ops would work, particularly for domestic workers, and seeing how we can integrate it with the Day Labor Worker Center, the Albany Park Worker Center, which has been around for so long, and how we can see something beautiful grow out of that as well. And in particular, this is also something that we're doing along with this major campaign that we're a part of for the Illinois Domestic Worker Bill of Rights. And what we're hoping to accomplish and what the domestic workers have been pushing for so long is for them to also have rights in their workplace. And unfortunately, domestic workers have been excluded from the most basic labor laws, like minimum wage, like having breaks. And this is something that we are hoping to push, and in January we'll be introducing a bill, a domestic worker bill of rights, in both the state Senate and the state House, and we're hoping to push that forward, obviously with domestic workers taking the lead, and not, you know, this is something that they're pushing for, but in addition to this, also seeing how we can grow into this co-op and have domestic workers push for their rights, but also build something together.
Wow, sounds like exciting times that will continue. It sounds like to me is that it's people, and I think you kind of alluded to that. It's people learning to speak or having the courage to speak and speaking for themselves. One of the other things that does occur to me, and we also touched on it, is people are people, and they bring a host of issues and concerns that maybe you're not equipped to deal with. What happens then? What do you tell that woman who says, I have a sick child or something going on in my family, or that man who says, you know, my wife is, something's wrong with her? Right. What happens then?
Yeah, it's important that, like many organizations that work with the community, that you create a network of other organizations. So we have an incredible network locally, regionally, and nationally of other organizations who we consider our sister organizations that provide a service or support that we aren't experienced yet in. One example with the domestic workers, which was an opportunity for us to learn and to grow and to be able to support them in this area, but was domestic violence, right? It's a very big issue. And it was a beautiful thing where it ignited a conversation within our organization. What do we need to do to become sort of experts and to be able to support these instances? But we were very fortunate to have a couple of groups who are experts in that and actually provide us trainings in that too. So, it's a matter of having complete communication and a solid network of other groups that you could refer members to.
All right, you can't do everything, but you can connect them to people that
Right.
that will help in that. We're getting close to running out of time. I'm curious as to what your vision for domestic workers, day laborers in Chicago and in the region is going into the future. Lisa, what would you like to happen? What would you like to see? You have a vision of not necessarily a perfect world, but a better world.
Yeah, I would love to see the SB 1708 bill passed. That'll be a start in helping build self-esteem, and giving those women encouragement.
Okay.
Better working conditions, protections on the job, minimum wage,
Minimum wage. What would you like to see as far as a minimum wage?
at least $17,000, $18 an hour.
That's I would call that a fair wage then.
Living wage.
Yeah, a fair living wage. Eric?
I'm excited to see, as you just got a taste of the different projects going on, and we're
Right,
just talking
yeah.
about Latino Union. I mean, we're part of a, two national networks, one with day laborers, one with domestic workers, one called the National Day Labor Organizing Network, the other, the National Domestic Worker Alliance. We have an incredible coalition here called the Illinois Coalition of Worker Centers and the Just Pay for All Coalition. So there's a lot of stuff happening. I'm just excited to see the fruits of it, and we've already seen much of it. But the fact where, the workers coming together, the numbers growing, projects and initiatives like Café Chicago just growing into the phenomenon that we all want it to be.
Okay, and Gabi, we're essentially out of time, so very briefly, tell us.
Everything they just said.
That's succinct.
And more. Yes.
Well, to all of you, thank you so much for coming
Thank
out and
you.
sharing part of the story of Latino Union. I know we could go on forever.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perspectivas Latinas is a community service of CAN TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on CAN TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.